Welcome to another edition of Talking Hoops, where we will be breaking down the local boys high school scene. Mark-Kern, joined by Tim-Bielik and David-Cassilo. And guys, an exciting day yesterday at the Play-by-Play Classic. Let's just go ahead and get started with the first question. Tim, what was the most surprising outcome or performance from yesterday's play-by-play?
Well, the most surprising one was seeing what East Tech was able to do defensively against St-Ignatius through three quarters. And they didn't have Corey Cullum, the East Tech, in that game, but give the Scarabs credit. It's a great team that hung around with Ignatius until the Wildcats made a nice little run at the end of the game to kind of pull away and get the win. But East Tech did show again that they're still a very good basketball team and a team that you have to keep an eye on.
Dave?
I'm going to go with Menor. I know that John Hay wasn't, they're not playing like a St. Ignatius or someone like that, but John Hay's still a quality team, and Menor just ran him out of the building. Kind of showed what can happen when they're firing at full cylinders.
Yeah, that second half, 32 points in the third quarter, just caught fire from three-point line. And the number one team in the cleveland.com poll still is Villa Angela St. Joseph. And when you look at them, Dave, another huge win against a non-local, talented, very, very good team. How good are they?
I mean, I think they're top 10 in the country good. It's hard to tell. It's just trying to put together these national polls is like a fool's errand. But hey, I mean, they keep beating anyone that comes in who they're going to play, and I think we'll really find out how good they are when they play Oak Hill on January 19th.
All right, and Tim, did that result surprise you? Looking at the schedule that they've played, are you surprised they're undefeated still?
Maybe a little bit. I mean, just because the schedule they play in is so difficult, but I think Dave mentioned, they're definitely worth being a top 10 team in the country. I think they're the best team in Ohio, bar none. There's VHJ and then everybody else in the state of Ohio. Mm-hmm. But when you look at the schedule, it's hard to see anybody but Oak Hill being the first team to beat them. That's really the one game that's going to be key because, they beat Oak Hill. All bets are off pretty much.
Yeah.
All right, and you guys, another very talented local team, Lorraine, 3 Division I athletes, including Devin Andrews, very, very good basketball player. How good is this team, guys?
When you look at Lorraine, when I look at Division I as a whole in our area, I think there's about 6 or 7 teams that can really put together and make a run. And I think Lorraine's one of those teams. We just don't know how good they are because they haven't really played anyone too good, and they really won't do that until they play Warrensville Heights in 2 weeks.
All right, and Tim, as you said, obviously a tough conference in the Lake Erie League. Where do they rank among those teams?
I think they're right now top 2 between them and Bedford, and when those two teams play, we're going to have a better idea where Lorraine stands. But, Dave kind of mentioned to it that Lorraine is the team that's going to make a lot of noise in the district, and when you look at how Lorraine plays, this is, I think, the team that was kind of envisioned a few years ago when Admiral King and Southview merged together. I think this was the product that they were imagining was going to happen with Lorraine basketball. And it's, good for the city that it's finally come together. Devon Andrews and Rashad Berry. It's hard to find a better two-man wing combination than those two guys. They're so athletic, and they're just one of the faster teams out there, especially in transition.
The Titans are doing very well. I'm looking at tomorrow night, maybe the game of the year up to this day is Cleveland Central Catholic against St-Vincent-St-Mary, 2 undefeated teams that have went and beat very good teams as well, like VHJ outside of Ohio. When you guys look at that matchup, start with you, Tim. Who do you like and why?
Well, I got burned by picking against St. V before. I'm going to pick them this time. And, I just love how their guards have been playing. We talked about, they kind of changed their look a little bit this year to be a little more guard-oriented team with Josh Williams and Henry Badley. Those guys have been playing really well. Jabri Blunt in the middle kind of gives them like a forward-out, 4-guard lineup. I like what that brings, and with St. V, what they were able to do against St. Anne's, I could see something pretty similar against Central Catholic.
And Dave, when CCC yesterday against Bedford, Bedford really made a comeback and got back in the game, even took the lead. What did you see from Cleveland Central Catholic, the way they responded to win that game?
I just think they have a toughness that you can't really coach. They're just such a strong team. It all comes down to, Antoine Lillard and Montel McCray. Those are the senior leaders. It's rubbing off on Turvell back and the rest of the team, and I think they're going to win tomorrow. I just think that environment that St. V is going to walk into is going to be so tough. And I think the Central Catholic's just going to thrive off of it.
All right, another team we kind of talked about earlier, Tim, from the Play-by-Play Classic, East Tech. This is a team that really has 3 guys that score, and Corey Cullen wasn't there yesterday, so 2 guys who score the ball. How far can a team go with only 2 guys that defenses really have to focus on?
Not nearly as far as they went last year. And last year, for a while, we were talking about East Tech kind of being a 3-headed monster with KT Taylor, John Alfred, and Anthony Cartman. It wasn't until Markel Johnson emerged later in the season that team really took off and, got to that Final Four, which was a tremendous run. You can go far with 2 guys. You can go really far with 3 guys. But I think, again, if you want to make that next leap, you got to have a 4th guy. I just wonder if they have that guy. But still, with those 3 guys, East Tech's got a chance to do something really good once again.
And David, I think a big reason why East Tech was in that game yesterday was the fact that Brett Moore, kind of changed his game plan, went to a 1-3-1 defense. What did you think of that? And just talk about Coach Moore overall and what you like about him.
I just think he always has the perfect game plan against whatever team he's playing. You know, they shouldn't have really been in that game against Ignatius. They shouldn't have really been in that game against St. Edward. They were undermanned in both games, and they hang in there and they find a way to stay competitive. And you know, to me, I don't think they should panic. I mean, I think they just need to get the full lineup together. This is still a team, I think, that can go far in the state tournament. I mean, if you look at where they were a year ago, they were probably about 14, 15 in our poll, and, you know, no one really thought they could do anything. So we'll see how it comes this year.
And it's interesting, Coach Moore, after the game, he said he respected what Coach O'Toole does against man-to-man defense. So he made the adjustment, and they were in the game for 3 quarters. So definitely still a very, very good team. And Tim, tomorrow you will be going to Greene and Wadsworth. Tell us about Greene, undefeated team.
Yeah, the Bulldogs have had a pretty nice start to the season. They're now 17th in our poll. I think this is a game on Tuesday night against Wadsworth, you know, a perennial team in the Suburban Leagues, always very competitive. I think it's a game we're going to learn a little more about the Bulldogs. We don't really know quite much about them because they haven't really been tested as much as some of the other teams higher up in the poll. But with 2 road games this week against Suburban League foes and Wadsworth, and I believe Copley later this week, we're going to learn a lot more about the Bulldogs. If they come out this week unscathed, they stay undefeated, it'll be a pretty good indication that the Bulldogs might be a team for real.
And what are your expectations for this week? Obviously, Wadsworth, that's a rivalry game. They play each other every year. What are you expecting from Greene?
I mean, I really don't know because you just don't know how good this team is. And, I mean, when you look at Greene, they've got the, you know, Marciniak is a great guard, and they've got good guards, but, you know, they haven't really been tested. And, like, it's kind of hard to figure out how they stack up, like, in the area as a whole, because Wadsworth and Copley, they're fine teams, but, you know, they're not playing, you know, St. Edward or, you know, Garfield-Heights or anyone like that. So I really don't think we're going to know a lot about Greene until the state tournament.
Okay, and then obviously you guys, preparing for the beginning of the season, you guys kind of had a mindset what teams would do what in each conference. Tim, let's start with you. What conference what's your opinion changed on a conference, maybe a different team to win it?
I think in the NOC, you know, I mentioned earlier in the season how it was going to go down from 5 really good teams to 4. It went back up to 5 with Brunswick's reemergence. They've been just an absolute surprise this season after losing Ryan Medowski and Zach Parker to graduation. I don't think anybody thought they would be doing the things that they're doing right now. They're undefeated, and just this conference looks strong once again. You got 4 teams in the top 11 or so of the poll, the cleveland.com poll, which is tremendous. And Strongsville, the team that's 6th in that division, just beat Brecksville, a quality team from the Southwestern Conference. So that NOC Valley division might be even better than it was last year. Knowing how good it was last year, that is a huge statement.
And Dave?
I'm going to echo that. I mean, the way Brunswick has played has really surprised me. And beginning of the year, I thought Lake Erie League was probably the best conference, but Warrensville Heights and Cleveland Heights have struggled a little, and I think it's NLC Valley again.
All right, guys, and the final question before we are joined by Garfield Heights coach Sonny Johnson. It's the New Year's, a few days in. Tim, give me a team and their New Year's resolution.
I'm going to go St. Edward. I think their resolution is to try and find a more consistent backcourt presence. And the Eagles, we know about their front court. We've talked about it for a long time, how great it is, but they've had some inconsistency with the backcourt, with the guards. It's going to be a process trying to figure out who the right guy is to be that man in the backcourt and be that stabilizing force, because once they find that, I think they're going to get back to that next level, and without it, they're going to continue to kind of be a little bit up and down.
All right, and Dave?
I'm going to go with a team that we haven't really talked about, Brush. I think the talent is there. I think it's just a matter of taking the right shot rather than the first shot, so I think that should be their New Year's resolution.
All right, I'm sure there's some other teams that probably could use some New Year's resolutions as well. And now we're joined by Garfield Heights coach Sonny Johnson. Coach, how you doing?
Hey, how you doing?
Not too bad. Coach, your team's off to a tremendous start this season. You kind of expected in the offseason that this team could be special. How has this team reached your expectations? And maybe tell us a surprise player or two.
Well, that's an expectation because they haven't matured. Honestly, when you got Willie Jackson and Frankie Hughes who are taking major leadership roles, and Brandon Johnson playing really like a singer, and Kyle Sturgis and those guys. They're just like they're leaders. When you got a team that can coach themselves you got a good group.
Coach, whenever we talk, you're always talking to me about the sophomore class. So tell me about these guys again and how they've impacted your team.
Yeah, I got definitely two of the best sophomores in the state, Marion Jackson and Sean Christian. And they have been playing unbelievable. You know, it's a pleasure to have. They call themselves the Splash Brothers. Like they hit about four or five threes a game. So they call themselves the Splash Brothers, like Stephen Curry, and I forgot the other guy, Davis or something like that, if I'm not mistaken. But they're really good. They can really shoot it. They really compete real hard, and they're good kids. That's another good thing about them.
Sonny, when you talk about this team, the two guys that are obviously the guys that have been the most consistent, I would say, are the juniors and Frankie Hughes and Willie Jackson. How much have you seen those two guys improve, even just in the first few games of the season?
Well, Willie Jackson, you know, he's always had a lot of hype since he was in the 8th grade, and to see him mature as far as his approach to the game, his leadership, and his, you know, he doesn't care about numbers, he just wants to win, and I think that's really special. Frankie just came out of nowhere. You know, people knew he was good, but he took another step in the summer. But leadership-wise, that's where they have really matured, and I think that's just rubbing off on our team.
Coach, obviously a big week for you guys with Shaker Heights on Friday, but you also have North-Royalton on Tuesday. What's kind of the mindset for your team right now, really focusing on North-Royalton and not looking forward to that next big game?
Well, that's a good thing. North-Royalton, you know, they're going to be very well coached. Thank God Amari Spellman's not there, so we prayed about that. But they're going to be a good team to go up against, and, you know, going into an environment like that, playing at their place is always tough. And Shaker is, you know, it's going to be tough as well. You know, that's a big-time rivalry, so.
Coach, like us, you were at the Play-by-Play Classic for most of the day yesterday. What did you take away when you looked at the other teams? Who really impressed you?
Well, Central Catholic has everything to me. They have the guard play. I don't know, as far as their bench, you know, that's the only thing they do. They keep getting more production on their bench, but they have everything. They got a college front line, Division I front line, with 6'9", 6'7", and 6'5" at their front line. That was impressive. I'll tell you, Cleveland Heights with their young talent was extremely impressive. You know, those guys are going to be definitely special in the future. Who else really impressed me? I think also Ignatius. Ignatius, they're going to do what Sean O'Toole wants them to do. They're very well coached, very disciplined, and, you know, they're not going to beat themselves. So you saw some great basketball yesterday, some very good coaching. Even East Tech, I mean, I think East Tech with Coach Moore, he does an unbelievable job. You know, those, like I know earlier, those guys are always ready to play. You know, no matter what, and they stay in games that you think they shouldn't be in, which is very important. That's a sign of good coaching.
Coach, we just talked about the NOC Valley Division now looking like, again, similar to last year, how it has 5 really good teams with Brunswick Surprise, Menor being obviously really good, you and Shaker with the rivalry, Medina being good. From an insider perspective, being a part of that conference, is it as good as you've ever seen a conference that you've been a part of?
It definitely is. I mean, because right now, like I heard earlier, we got 11. I mean, there are 4 teams in the top 11 in the area. So, you know, you're looking at Menor, you're looking at Shaker, you're looking at Brunswick. I mean, you can't forget about Medina or Strongsville, because any night it can be any one of these teams' nights, because, you know, I think every team is getting prepared because of who they're playing in the conference. So that's what makes it special, and, you know, it's good to know when you're playing a game that you're going to have great games like this to compete.
Coach, last question. You know, last year with Division I, it was sort of, everyone sort of knew that St. Edward would eventually, you know, make it out of the district and probably win the title. Do you feel like this year, especially locally in Division I, it's sort of yours for the taking if you want it?
Well, that's what we're hoping. You know, first of all, we're going to start off with the conference. This is our last year in the NOC, so we want to win that. That's the biggest thing. You know, we want to cut down nets at the end of the year and win that NOC for our last time being in this conference. We go independent next year, And after that, I think with how unselfish this team is and how they're playing together, I think the sky's the limit. You know, I told them before I adjusted as a coach for us, trying to, push and go so crazy early in the year, not wear your boys out. And I want them to be good, but I want to continue getting better. And I think that's the most important thing is managing and making sure they're getting better game by game. And by the end of the year, we're ready to make a tournament run.
All right, Coach. Always a pleasure to talk to you. Best of luck this week and the rest of the season.
Hey, thank you all so much. Thank you, fellas.
All right, and as Coach Sonny Johnson said, he likes his Garfield Heights team. This is a very, very good team. And now let's look at some of the other teams in the top 25. Tim, let's start with you. What was some shake-up or some teams that moved up?
I mean, when you look at the top 10 and the top 25 throughout, I mean, seeing Lakewood come back in after handing North-Olmsted their first loss of the season on Saturday, getting a chance to go out there, and it was kind of what we've come to see out of Lakewood the last year or two. They're going to play scrappy defense. They're going to play really hard. They don't have a lot of size, but when they can get the three ball going, that's a tough team to stop, and they proved that again. It was a tremendous shooting exhibition by Lakewood. They also played great defense on North-Olmsted's Andy Lucian. I mean, it's rare to see him really get frustrated and not have the kind of night that he's had all season.
All right, and Dave, what are some teams that you're looking for this week to see how they do?
Well, I felt like the hardest thing with the top 25 this week was finding that number 5 team. So I'm looking at all the teams we sort of considered: St-Ignatius, Menor, Shaker, St. Edward, Lorraine. Those teams, like, who wants it? Who wants to be considered, one of the top 5 teams in the area? Because last week, a couple of these teams lost, or Lorraine really hasn't played the schedule to warrant it yet. So that's what I'm really looking at. Who really deserves to be in that top 5?
And I know we'll talk on Wednesday's podcast about the Friday matchups, but St. Ignatius, Menor, they get to play some very, very good teams this weekend to prove if they belong in that top 5.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, St. Ignatius has Central Catholic, and then Menor plays Brunswick and VSJ. So, and then Shaker's got Garfield. So, I mean, it's up to them.
Someone's going to earn it.
Yeah, it's up to them.
All right, and then also the state AP poll comes out tonight, and what are you guys kind of looking for in that tonight?
A mess. Just a mess. As we've come to sort of observe throughout the years here, when you get that AP poll, it is just sort of, people just don't really know other areas very well. So especially the first one, it takes these voters a little time. So, I guarantee that our rankings and the teams that we know well are going to be a lot different than how other people view them in the state. I'm sure a team like, St. Edward, who is 4-3 right now, will probably get a lot more credit because they won the title last year. A team like Lorraine, who is, covered by multiple papers, could get a lot of credit. I mean, some of these credits deserved, but, last year, for example, we were talking off the air, like, in the girls' AP poll, it was like Berea and Mid-Park were 2 separate schools. So, I would always say take this poll with a grain of salt, especially early.
All right, Tim, before we wrap this show up, will VASJ be the number 1 team in Division III in the state AP poll?
I'd be hard to see any way that doesn't happen. I mean, when even the poll voters have to consider who they've played, people that haven't seen VASJ, they have to know who Colin Bragg is. I'm sure most of them know who Brian Parker is after he was the Division III co-player of the year last year. I don't see any scenario in which VASJ is not number 1 in Division III right off the bat.
If VSJ loses the rest of their games, they should still be number 1 in Division III.
They definitely have some tough games coming up. Look for that tonight. That'll be posted later this evening. And stay tuned. Wednesday, we'll be doing the boys basketball podcast.
Wow.
And just all the boys basketball you want. For Tim-Bielik and David-Cassilo, I'm Mark-Kern.